you know, he's just trying not to work, so he is coming back to within the next half an hour or so. So I've asked Rosie to sit in his place, if that's okay. I've got a host of questions. Some of them are kind of duplicated. So, and one question that keeps coming up here, half a dozen times, is the question about brain stem death versus circulatory death. And there's two aspects. One is the clinical aspect of it, one is the spiritual aspect. I was hoping to clarify what you understand is what the difference is, where it comes into donation, where it's a sticking point. That's really important.
So, for a patient who's potentially brainstem dead, we call it now diagnosis of death. Neurological criteria, they keep changing the name of it, but it's basically the brainstem has died through whatever reason, a head injury or whatever illness they've come in with. And so the signs that show this, and the doctors will decide that they need to do brainstem death tests to check that the brainstem has actually died. It's irreversible. And two doctors will do a set of tests. They're quite basic tests, but the legal tests that then confirm death, that patient has died, and they would never wake up, they won't survive, the brainstem has died. They might be on the ventilator, so they'll still be pink and warm, and the heart will still be beating, and that's what the relatives will see. But the tests that are carried out will confirm that they've actually died. So these are done by two senior doctors, consultants. One does one test, the other one watches, and then they'll repeat that test. And the first set of tests that are done will be the time of death. So that's an important aspect for families, because that will be on the death certificate. So they might do a set at 10 o'clock in the morning. We might do the second set at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The time of death will be 10 o'clock that morning. And they'll carry them tests out. And this patient, if the family consent for donation, can donate the heart, the lungs, the liver, the pancreas, the kidneys, the bowel. This donor can donate more or less all solid organs. With the other donor, which is with donation after circulatory death, that's when the treatment's going to be stopped and because it's seen as futile and that patient isn't going to get better. The decision's made. And the treatment will always, if the family consent for donation, then everything's set up, we get the matching, we get the surgeons there, everything's set up, the patient will remain on that ventilator until we do all that process. And then when the teams have arrived to do the operation, all the treatment's stopped, the tube's removed, the ventilator's stopped, and then we wait for the heart to stop, circulatory, like normal circulatory death, and the doctors will then, once the heart stops, will certify death, and the patient will be quickly moved to theatre where they will have the operation to explant the organs for transplantation. With the brainstem death patient, obviously they've been certified death by legal criteria, and that's been done. So they'll remain on the ventilator, they'll go to theatre on the ventilator, and the operation will take place in a little bit more controlled manner because they've already been certified as dead. If that makes sense. Is there any questions? Quite complicated. Yeah. With the brainstem death patients, so there's signs that show that they've become brainstem dead. The blood pressure might spike really high and then drop really low. They might become stable. There's certain signs the pupils will stop reacting. There'll be things like that that we can see that this is what we think has happened. And the doctor will prepare the family and say this is what we think has happened, the brainstem has been irreversibly damaged, and that patient will be carrying out brainstem death tests. And the family can observe these tests and that's what they like. So sometimes, families will want to see the tests, and we can support them through that, because obviously the patient's on the ventilator, like I said, they're warm, they're pink, their heart's beating, but they can see, and so it's difficult to understand that concept then. So the family can actually observe the tests being carried out, so they can see that there's no response to any of the tests that they're doing. The patient has no response whatsoever, so that's something that we do offer.
Just out of interest, so both scenarios are identical in the sense of someone's physically looking alive, and you want to say, well, this guy to, you don't want to leave you on that. If they actually physically die in the heart, then time is of the essence. So that's a really kind of sensitive and critical kind of moment.
It
question how that balance is made? It sounds
So, I mean, obviously they've communicated with through from the very start, so the families will understand what's going on, and from our point of view, we communicate them all the way through the process. It's difficult, like you said. With the withdrawal of treatment and we wait till the heart stops, we speak to the family, obviously, and we've got time to set up that process before the treatment stopped. And we make sure, you know, that family's got that extra time and extra number of hours. There's no rush at that point. So we say you've got all this time now while we set up that process to spend with your loved one. But from the very beginning, we make it clear that once that heart has stopped and within 35 dead, then we've got to go to theatre quite quickly. It's 5 minutes and then certification and then into theatre. But obviously the family want donation, they want a good outcome, they want the transplants to work, and that's why we've got to do it that quickly. The heart stops, you know, so it's got to be done. And it's done, even though it's quick, it's done with respect. It's not like we just whisk them off and, you know, it's not nothing like that at all. And the family is clearly communicated with from the beginning to the end.
One thing I'd like to understand is how certain are the brain stem death tests when you do them? Are they open to interpretation? Because if you were a family member, you'd want it to be absolutely clear, wouldn't you?
Yeah, they're not open to the set of tests set out by the Royal Colleges, and it's the legal tests. They're not very complicated, they're quite basic tests. And it might be that the patient shows signs that this is happening. The brainstem is actually, you know, becoming damaged. So they carry out the test, and if there's any, like I said, they're quite basic, checking the people, checking the pain, and just checking all the nerves that are running through the brainstem. But if there's any signs that you might take a breath, or then that test has stopped. Yeah, monitor it then. But we take the patient off the ventilator for a number of 5 to 10 minutes, and we'll watch for signs of breathing, we'll check the CO2 levels, and the tests that we do, even though they're basic, they're quite intrusive.
Hopefully this is one of the issues that I'd like to address in among the contentious issues later. But in summary of what I'd like to say later, there was a conference of scholars who gathered together in 1985 in Kuwait, and their conclusion was that the Quran and the Hadith, two basic texts of Islamic tradition, neither of them define death. And that's a very important statement, because the question was about, is there a difference between brainstem death and circulatory death? There is, but the Quran doesn't define what is the point of death, at what point has death occurred. And therefore, who makes that decision? You can't say it has to be a scholar of the Quran, because the Quran doesn't tell you. So in effect, where do the answers come from? And hopefully I'd like to argue that the concept of brain death is not incompatible with the Quranic texts. And some of the guidance suggests that the definitions that are used in the medical world in the UK at the moment are completely valid. I think that's the argument I would like to make. It's not conclusive, but I'd like to suggest that later on.
Okay, I'm going to try and collect this again. So, at least half the time that's come up in this question is about patients opted in. So not just the kind of the general opt-in scenario you did mention before, but someone's deemed to be opted in and you bet money against it, chances are you may not go ahead with it. What if I was to opt in, and then after my death my family said, "I don't want this to happen"? How do you deal with that? Perhaps in your own way step, what if I was to put in my will? Can you challenge that? What would happen? Because surely time is of the essence, so that's not acceptable. So
if it's in your will, it's too late by the time that's ready. It has to be done, obviously, like I say, time is of the essence. So yes, families do, obviously, people sign on the register, they might sign on more than one time, so it's, you know, they definitely want to be an organ donor. But obviously, as you can imagine, it's really difficult. It's a really difficult time. the worst time of their life, they're losing someone they love, they might not have discussed this, they didn't know if they wanted, so it might come out of the blue that this is what the family loved one wanted. So we just try and make sure that we can sort of support them in whatever way they need, any misconceptions, address them, and then, you know, as a family they need to come together. So I've had several times where some family members want the donation, some family members don't. We've addressed the issues. It might be small issues, like, well, not small, massive to them, but something that we see as small, like somebody needs to go and let the dog out, and this is the thing that they want to get out of the hospital because they need to go and let, you know, something that's really important to them at that time. It's the worst time of their life, and this is on the mind, and then it's working through what it is that this family really don't want. You know, what is it? Is there anything we can do to support? And then them to come together as a family and decide if it's what they want. I've had it where a family, I went into a family once who, it was on the register, and I got a call and they said, can you go? It was a big family, and they were quite disjointed, if you could say that. So some family members didn't speak to other family members. This sort of family members wanted donation. They knew he was on the register, these didn't. So then I turned up and they were like, the doctor sort of like pushed me in the room. He's on the register, and I like went in, right, okay. They've been like really aggressive families, and like shut the door, yeah. And we've already mentioned it, that's what we don't want. And we've already mentioned it, and I was like, oh right, okay. And so when I went in and spoke to them, they were like, oh yeah, we want it, and this side were like, oh no, we don't. I said, oh well, it was on the register. So then this family said no, like, oh well, if it's on the register, then we want it. And they went, well, we don't want it now. So it wasn't about the patient, it was about, so there's really difficult situations that you've got to manage, and you've got to respect, you've got to respect whatever decision they actually come to, and then support them through his death, the patient's death. So it's not like we'll just say, do you want organ donation? No, we don't. All right, then bye. As specialist nurses, will support the decision, we'll make sure it's an informed decision, and one that's right for them at that time, and then we'll support them through the death.
Do you get a lot of waste
Not really. We do quite a lot of rigorous tests up to the point of matching. So we'll collate all the information, we do the testing, make sure we know all the medication they're on, we speak to the GP. If there's notes in different hospitals, or they've been seen by other, they might have been seen at Salford and now they're at Pennine, we go to Salford and we read the notes, and we'll try and find as much information as we can, so that we know that the organs that are going to be transplanted are going to be a successful transplant for that patient. And a successful outcome for that family, because that's ultimately what we want, to make sure that someone's life gets saved, and ultimately the family who are bereaved have a positive, it's the worst possible time of their life, but if you can just get one thing that's going to help them through that time, then that's why we do our job. Really, it's amazing that in this situation that they're in, the worst possible time, they're so selfless and think of other human beings, that they can then say that they want to save someone else's life, then just writing them a letter to say, the liver of your loved one saved a child, and that's something that makes them really proud, and they know that their loved one sort of like living on with someone else. And so for us, that's why we do our job.
Thanks for Shaykh, actually. Is there a forum for muftis with different opinions to get together to discuss their opinion? And another question, the same question, but perhaps just as well. You mentioned in 1985 there was a. Is there some for either? Is it regularly, or is this once every 10 years?
The previous major piece of work in the UK involved a number of scholars from different backgrounds. And I think that was in the late 90s. 1995 was the year, and that had a number of scholars. Since that time, there hasn't been, as far as I know, any UK-based attempt to bring scholars together with clinicians to address this question. As it says in 1985 in Kuwait, there was an international attempt, but the answer to that is no, they should.
I'm interested, what caused that 1985 person issue that was raised at the time?
The international one in Kuwait was, if you look historically, the discussion about brainstem death started around 1958, 59, and Muslims took some time to respond to that, and by the time it got to 50 years, 20 years later, some countries had established legal codes which allowed organ donation and others hadn't. So they decided to get a lot of people on a political basis together to thrash out the question, bring in lots of medical people, bring in lots of legal people, bring in lots of scholars. And so that was the thinking in 1989.
So, seeing that isn't the case, and a lot of the questions that have come over the last few meetings as well, is there any way we can facilitate such a thing, or encourage such a thing, or you can encourage such a thing?
I don't know how politically correct I need to be. Unfortunately, some people are struggling to decide when Eid is. And if you can't get the mosques to agree when we start fasting, I think the chances of getting everybody around the table to really address something important, not that Eid isn't important, but it's a matter of priority within the community, and unfortunately I don't think the Muslim community, understand, or the priorities are not the same as the people in this room, and I think that's quite difficult for us to see how do we move forward with this, because if I were to go and say, well actually we need to get together to talk about organ donation, they're more interested. They'd be more interested. If I wanted to get people together to try and discuss the moon, and how you cite the moon, I'm a bit sceptical. I wish it could happen, but I don't see it happening in the immediate future, unless there's an initiative from the government, for example, and that's possibly what might happen in a Scottish context, because it might be slightly easier for us. That it might be easier because there's less scholars, the community is smaller, and the protocols are slightly behind, we're 6 months behind you, so we have a little bit more time, plus we have a nationalist agenda. And that's actually relevant, because going back to the question you had before, was what happens if they object? The first question you ask in the protocol, so to speak, is should we ask any questions? And that's based on how they opted in. And that relates to, are they Scottish, or are they Scottish residents? It's interesting, we have a friend who's originally from Scotland, so if he dies protection on the way to Scotland, would he be Scottish or not? In other words, has he opted in? And if he has opted in, so to speak, that actually relates to the question of what happened yesterday with regards to the EU, because the definition of who is Scottish and who is not Scottish will be affected by what happened yesterday. So we're moving down a direction which is political, but it might have an impact on what's going on here. So let's watch this space.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once you've got that question, can you ask family, what was the person's last wishes? That's the next. What was the person's last known wish? And if it was to donate, then it's important. So that's quite important.
Fascinating. So seeing that the Mufti kind of meeting is on hold at the moment, what we can say, I think some of the questions are related to how, basically, kind of collating other ways of increasing this 1% of donations we talked about, Franjo mentioned in his talk. Perhaps people are not in intensive care. Strategy, some of our colleagues have written down, should this be on the student curriculum in healthcare professional nurses and medical physicians, etc.? Should be on something like that. Should there be some sort of incentive scheme or targets? But anyway, this is a suggestion. Or should organisations have set targets, or council set targets? Should there be community group champions, etc.? Is there the strategies that are in the pipeline, or things that we can use to increase this number?
So yes, it should be definitely 6 schools, nurses, doctors, training. And we try and do that as specialist nurses, but we obviously our main priorities are the donor families, so we only when we can. But with regards like the community, the government has funded some community projects. It's called the Community Investment Scheme. So we did one last year in England. Not in Scotland, but we're trying that. Yeah, we should. I've been talking to Rosie about it. So yeah, but in England and Wales, we've been funding projects within the community. So they applied for funding, and then we worked. You know, we had like a board that decided which community projects we would fund. And last year we had about 24. That finished in around August time, September, and then we put calls out again for the second round, and we've got 52 projects this year in all communities, which has been brilliant. There's quite a lot of Muslim communities, Chinese, Hindu, Jain. It's a really wide variety of communities around England and Wales, and they're using these projects to do whatever initiatives they want to increase donation and promote it within their community. We'll support in whatever way we can, with promotional things, speakers if they need, that sort of things, but the community are doing it themselves, which has been fantastic. It was really, really successful last time around. I'm going to a BEMA project next week that's being run in Bradford. There's a couple with the leaders in Manchester. It's really, really positive. Which has been fantastic. So we are doing stuff like that, and obviously I don't know, do you know Abdal has been doing some work about transplantation in Islam for quite a number of years, working with some scholars around and trying to get the message out on them. So there is stuff going on, but definitely need more things, especially like in the schools, and I think that's where we need to start.
University, but actually more than that,
I think so. There is like independent organisations. So there's an organisation that so Yasser, they live in London, they're London based, but he lost his daughter who needed a stem cell transplant and unfortunately didn't get that transplant. And he set up his own charity, and he's working to put together some information for like primary school children around, and not necessarily just about organ donation, it's around the giving, the aspect of giving and being kind and being a kind human being, and that sort of thing, but aimed at like primary school children, and then working up to the secondary schools and then just increasing the knowledge around donations. That's been really successful. So there is lots of independent charities doing lots of fantastic work around the country. But from an NHSBT point of view, us with the community investment scheme, it's been really successful, and I think that's the way forward with it.
There's a question here about coming back to essentially just talking about the Muslim community and their reaction to organ donation. I know Manchester is quite a diverse community, and I bet Rosie, where you work in Salford, you have lots of people with different minorities backgrounds. So questions about cultural differences and how that impacts on your relationship with them and any difficulties that may show. I thought from a practical perspective you may have had some experience.
Yeah, and obviously I'll be talking about this a little bit later when I give my talk, but I think this comes up quite a lot because obviously a lot of patients, they need a transplant and they're from Muslim background, and most people are happy to have a transplant, although there are still some people who don't feel comfortable with that. There's some worries about living donation as well, but I think a lot of people, as I think you said earlier, they would rather get advice from their imam, more like to listen to that than from what I might say, unfortunately. Yes, I think I get the impression they're gathering various opinions from family, friends, from the imams, and obviously from ourselves, and that all helps them to make the decision whether it's about dialysis or transplant. So I sort of feel like I'm one of the influences, but probably not the dominant one. But I get the impression it's a very individual decision, whether it's living donation, because sometimes families ask me, can I donate? And obviously I always encourage them to find out more information about whether they can. but also about deceased donation. There seems to be a great spectrum of views about whether it's acceptable or not, and I think people don't always know how to make sense of all the different sources of information.
Do you find this more of a question to you, brainstem death or circulatory death, which is the easier of the two that Muslims to accept more? Because I've got a question here. There was about in Scotland last month. There was a first successful, I wrote it down as a successful circulatory death heart transplant, and there's not been that many. And I thought, well, that might be the answer, but I don't think it's in Ireland. I'm not sure it's different to it. But do you find there's a difference between whether they're more likely to accept by brainstem death or circulatory death?
One of the consequences of the fatwa is that he put this emphasis. If you read it carefully, the question is really, what is death? Whereas the previous ruling from the group that came together in 1995, the conclusion to that was that the definition of death would be left to the professionals, and that then took it out of the hands, so to speak, of the label. We don't need to make those difficult decisions, because somebody else is going to say when he dies, when he's dead, and when he's not dead. And that now brings more confusion, because what happened in the last discussion here was Dr. Omar had described the process, and then it raised the question, but is he dead? And you can imagine the panic that that's going to bring about, because you're describing what you're doing to him, but he hasn't actually died. In other words, you're mutilating his body, and it's murder. And that kind of panic mode is a result of this moving away from what we said in 1995, which was actually the doctors know they define when death is. You just need to decide, do you want to donate your organ as a gift to humankind or not? And shifting it now to this discussion about what's death, it's complicated, and I think we need to respond because it's now out. You can't put it back in the box. But unfortunately, it's a discussion I would prefer that we weren't having, and I think it's going to knock back the timescales of what we were hoping was going to be a very smooth transition with this protocol, and I think it's going to knock us back. Sorry.
So coming back to that the circulatory transplant in Scotland, is that having an impact? Is that an option? Is that helpful?
Yeah, it's an option. It's a new option, but there's strict criteria on that for the heart transplant from circulatory death. And there's not all centres that do that, and so it is an option, but a very limited option. And obviously heart transplants are rare, there's not that many of them happen, but there's lots of people who need them. So, the transplant world is looking at other ways, because there's people waiting for transplants and suffering waiting for transplants, so we're looking at other ways and the heart transplant and the donation of the circulatory death is quite new, novel but successful. But you've got to meet the criteria that sits with that. So that's
Actually, perhaps going back to again the optimal. You said a couple of times how far? No, it mentioned relatively object. How far down the family tree do they have to move forward? They have to have a voice. Do you have a criteria?
We're regulated by the Human Tissue Authority, and they've got a hierarchy of people that we look to for consent. So we go to the next of kin set out by the Human Tissue Authority. So the next of kin is the person who really should have that say, that ultimate say. But it's difficult in family situations when it might be the wife says yes, but the daughters say no, or the sons or whatever. So we look to the whole family decision. We don't want to split that family even further. They're going through the most tragic time in their life, and then going against family members. It's really difficult. I'm going back to another situation that I had where the patient was on the register and the wife said yes, they wanted to respect his wish, what he wanted. He verbally told her several times that he wanted to be a donor, and the daughter said yes it is, and the son said yes it is, and there was one daughter who said no, I'm not having that. No. But we went along with the three that said yes, because we knew that you know, that's what he wanted. It's difficult. You've got to, every situation is different and every family is different, and you've got to work with them to make sure that they're making that right decision at that time. You're not going to cause them more grief. But usually we go through the hierarchy and the human tissue process, but obviously work with the family all together as one. We can't have you split them.
You go with the majority decision, or are you waiting for a unanimous?
Well, we tend to we work with them all and talk, and I mean try and get them to discuss it together as a family. We come to a conclusion as a family. You know, we give that information, we discuss why, and we work with them, but then we'll let them have time to talk about that as a family. The family, the one daughter, there were other issues around, it wasn't that, and there were church flying and things like that. And it wasn't about the donation, it was about the family lived. So in that situation, we had to then think, you know, if it was that she was really didn't want to pass them and we were all together as a family unit, then that might have been a different outcome if they weren't together as a family unit. So we went with what the majority went on that case. But like I say, everyone's different, and you've got to just make sure that you're working with them and respecting what they want as a family, but ultimately getting the best outcome for them.
Dr. Umar just sent a message and a question. So I might, just to keep it to one more. Interesting one is, so if after death the soul being of our Muslim belief, if after death the soul leaves the body, why is there any concern about the organs before?
I think the body, hopefully I'll try and address some of these. But in essence, the body is something which has its dignity just by the fact that it is a human body. And that has to be respected during life and after death. So you cannot, even though the spirit has left, you still have to respect the body to the extent that you can't harm it in any way. And you'll sometimes find that people will be putting the soil onto the body and say, no, not so hard. And that, to put it on gently, and that's because of this concept of respecting the human body. Maybe touch on that.
Another question is saying, I don't know if it probably passed all three from an Islamic perspective and externally, is there a list of organs that you do use and certain ones you don't? Someone mentioned actually skin and bone, and is there anything?
Recycling, isn't it? So no, tissue is bone, tendons, that's sort of skin, that's tissue donation, that's always done after death. It can be done up to 72 hours after death. Corneas, that can give sight back to someone. But then solid organs, obviously it can save up to 9 lives through solid organ donation, so yeah, we tend to
Actually, I shouldn't have been so flippant. Mufti Zubair points out that only the organs, he mentions the gonads, but only that which might raise doubts, confidence, inheritance, or lineage, and that might have some legitimate source. How relevant it is to actual transplant process, I'm not sure. This may be theoretical.
He's asking about the difference between solid organs and tissues and blood donation. And there's an issue with blood donation as well. Is there an Islamic issue with that? Do you have people having worries about that? And if not, is there do you find certain ethnic minorities don't give enough blood? So you encourage it?
Within the Muslim faith, there are two separate questions. And so whoever addresses the legal ruling, so to speak, will address them separately. And most do not have the... They will be addressed separately, although the sources will be the same. The actual answer to the question will be. And as far as I understand, I have not found anybody that has a difficulty with blood transfusion, blood donation.
Yeah, just for that.
Yeah, there is a big problem. And there's different ethnicities, mean different blood groups. I'm just the normal or common. But obviously, with like the heart transplant and lots of the organ transplants, the blood matching is really important. Really, really important. So ethnic minorities with rare blood groups really struggle, especially within the black community as well, with the sickle cell crisis that people have and the different blood types. So there's a real, I mean, I don't know too much about blood donation because that's obviously I just work in organ donation, but I do know from my colleagues that there's a big drive to try and get more Black Asian people to donate. It is again seen as something that's not really done.
Is that a quick fix? Sorry? That's really tough. It's not an easy fix if there's no objections.
Yeah, I think you're right. Politically, to maybe a good move to raise the question. Yeah, that's maybe a strategy we're looking.
It's asking what is the hard argument used by scholars who are against organ? What's that in the basic crux of it?
Yeah, hopefully.
I think it's fair to say that Donne is for.
Yeah.
A lot of these things.
I think I don't need to give my presentation now.
No.
but in essence, there are some traditions which indicate that the use of organs would be against that the sanctity of the human body. And there's a specific example which is given, which is the use of hair extensions. Now you might think, well, what's that got to do with organ transplants? But there's a prophetic tradition of hadith where the Prophet Muhammad forbids the use of natural hair extensions from one woman to another. And some of the scholars have then said, by extension of that, they've said that the use of an organ from another body is not permitted. Based on that argument, and arguments similar to that, it leads to the idea that in effect reusing a body is against its sanctity. So that's the fundamental argument that those who are against it start from. And those that are in favour of it, like Dr. Umar and myself, is that actually saving life takes priority over everything, it trumps everything, including hair extensions. That's our position, with no disrespect to those.
Just going to be an interesting question here. It says there's been some really encouraging cases that have gone to court and appeal. Life support machines have been switched on and off and changed decisions, especially when the children are obviously more emotive when you have children involved. Has this had an adverse effect on your work, on donation numbers, or anything like that? Does it help? Has it highlighted the problem?
No, not that. I know that there's been recent cases, but organ donation hasn't been a part of that, so no, it's not. I think the most damaging thing has been like the WhatsApp messages that have been going around about the opt-out. That's been the real. For us, we've seen a massive increase in people opting out of the organ donor register, and a lot of the messages are fake messaging. The government's taking your organs. You need to opt out now because by tomorrow you're going to be. We're going to whisk everybody off the theatre and pinch all their organs. So these are more damaging than anything that's been going around recently. We've seen a massive increase in people signing up the register. And what we don't want to do is people sign up the register with incorrect information, myths and misconceptions. We want people to have the right information and make their own informed choices.
Is there anything you think could be done as a counter social media?
Yeah, we've been asking like the community groups that we work with and all the organisations to send out messaging saying, this is false information, so people have been doing that, communities have been doing that, and we've been doing that as an organisation. We've been putting that on social media and things, but it's been getting worse as the law's going to be changing. The closer we get, the more messages we get.
Can I just share my own experience? I'm a GP myself, and After the last meeting, which really, I came with my wife and my children, and I was really taken aback by that. In fact, that evening, myself, my wife, and my children sat down, had a chat, and then we signed up for the organ donation on that very day itself. But I'm a GP, and I work in a community in Hyde. We've got a very large family population there. And we started something called Health Walk with GP with some of the men. So we went to the mosque the week after, prayed Zohar and Namaz, and then the men that came out went for a walk for an hour. And I suggested that I wanted to talk about organ donation with them. And that was the first time I did that. It was based on the principles that had been discussed at the last meeting. And about 10 men came along, and we went for a walk for an hour, so it was about looking after our own health and well-being. And as we were walking, we talked about organ donation. And at the end of that 1 hour, one man said, I'm also going to join the organ donation. And the other said, they're going to go back and talk to their families and said, can you bring this up in the mosque and things? So it's all about us taking personal responsibility, not just for ourselves and our own families, but those people that we're with. And hopefully in the future we might talk a little bit more about what that was and what it meant. Because if you imagine, remember that patients trust their doctor more than anybody else in society. We've got a number of GPs in this room, all of whom patients look up to. If we start to have that conversation and we start to become champions ourselves, and I recognise actually the real champion isn't me, it was that one person who came along on the walk. If he then goes back into the community and says he's done the same, then guess what? You then start the ripple, and then you start your own WhatsApp groups. In fact, on that walk group, one of the men, when I first did the first walk, while I was doing the walking, and although I'm very active on social media and all the rest of it, on this occasion I deliberately decided just to walk and not have my phone and things. Somebody else in the group was busy creating a new WhatsApp group and getting all his friends to join together so that they could go on a health walk with the GP. So if you start to see, we can actually turn things around, and they'd organise themselves, and these are Bengali patients who aren't supposed to be using technology.
Just asking, as a GP on behalf of the other GPs in the room, how has he got an hour to go walking during the day?
I'll talk about that.
He'll be on the panel in the afternoon.
Today I'm the cameraman, remember? I'm not the GP.
And he's filming my cousin's wedding next week as well. A really interesting question here, which I think I know where it's come from. It says that what if a patient doesn't have capacity, so they have learning difficulties or some other sort of problems for that, and they have no relatives? Where do they stand at the moment? Are they going to go home a couple of kilos lighter?
At the moment, no. So if we've got a patient, obviously all patients that we see are intubated, ventilated, so we can't assess capacity when we then come to meet them. But we do have lots of patients who we get referred who have no next of kin, and that's difficult. Are they on the organ donor register? We check that. We check if they're on the register first. Oh, well, now, currently, before the law change, before the law change, we check if they're on the register. We probably then get some support, some incas to come along to talk to us, and we maybe try and find friends, family, if we can, possibly. We use the police to try and find relatives, that sort of thing. If they're in a nursing home or something like that, we might bring in the staff and talk about what sort of people they are, and that's if they're on the register. If they're not on the register, then we don't go ahead with donation.
But now they are.
But if they're, so if they are, we can't assess their mental capacity, so we don't know if they've understood the law change. We can't do that. So if they've no next of kin, it'd be the same. We'd do the same sort of thing as we do now. We need the family, we need the information, we need to work with them, we need to make the transplant safe, we need information about travel, behaviour, medical history, and that from family, and that's what we seek when we have conversations with them. So it would be the same as it is now. No. Unless we can find someone who, we can speak to, who knew that person well enough to say, friend of long standing, we go through all that. And it has been several times when we haven't been able to find someone, so, which is sad, but yes, true.
Is there a consent issue?
very good. Going back to certainly the law as it states in Scotland, capacity is a condition of the assumed consent implies capacity. If the person is known to not have had a capacity prior to being in a state to be able to donate, then the questions won't even be asked. It's like a child or somebody who's not resident in Scotland. The questions don't arise, so it's just not going to be asked. If you're asking from an Islamic perspective, I have to say that that's an area that I'm not sure of, and it was actually the friend that just raised who actually gives consent at the point after death, because does the body belong to that person or not? And that's almost a philosophical question, and the answer would probably be, from the Islamic context, that it's not that person, that it's those around, based on that person's wishes, which is in tune with what we're saying here. And why I say that is because when a person dies, what happens to that body? The physical body is no longer a legal responsibility of that person, it's the legal responsibility of others. They have to perform the funeral, they have to do the washing, and that legal responsibility falls on the community. So therefore the consent after death is not simply the person, but the wishes of that person should be taken into account, which is roughly where we're at with the current proposed protocols, the current protocol. So there's no contradiction there in terms of where the Islamic understanding of consent is. But that's kind of
I've got another question in relation to if persons had the transplant, there's a time question, how long the process would take, and then first, once they've had their own washing the body, burial, is there a delay? Have you, in your experience, had any issues with that? Is it a significant problem?
I can't see it. I mean, from what I've seen of the process of donation and proposed donation, it actually seems as if anything it would speed the process up, because people are actually more aware of what the next step is, and everybody's planning. I mean, just taking on a practical level, that Sarah, my wife, is on the organ transplant list for lung transplant at the Freeman Hospital. We live in Glasgow, but we're on the list in Newcastle. So it might be that there's a car accident in Inverness. That body, if that transplant is going to take place, the process is really well thought through. But we will need to be in Newcastle at such and such a point, along with somebody else who's also on the transplant list, in case it doesn't match. So there'll be two people waiting for these lungs, and I'm assuming other people waiting in other parts of the country for other organs. So that process is really well thought through, and it's actually, if anything, it would speed the process up, I'm pretty certain. And in reality, if that person who died in Inverness was a Muslim, and I was there looking after that person in terms of washing the body, I would feel comfortable and confident that there would be no delay in fulfilling the Islamic duty of washing the body. Obviously, it would be immediately after the operation has taken place, and the death certificate would have been prepared, and the funeral will be almost immediate. There won't be any difficult time, or there will be no problem. I can't see it happening. I don't see any problem at all.
So from it can take 12 to 24 hours for the whole process to take place, but that's not from like when the patient has died. So obviously, like I said, we speak to the family after the decision's been made, and the patient will stay on the ventilator until everything's been set up, ready, and then at the point you withdraw treatment for circulatory death, the treatment will start, the patient will die, will go to theatre. The operation might take 2 to 6 hours, prox, do you know what I mean? But like I say, everything will already be in place. We'll have already been speaking to the burial people, we'll have the certificates ready. And the good thing about, I mean, you know, especially since we've got time to like make sure these things are done, whereas the doctors and nurses and on the units, when they're busy with all the patients and things, they've not got the time to sort, oh, I have to do the death certificate, I haven't got time. We'll get that done, we'll make sure this is done. We've worked with the Muslim Burial Society, you know, I've been to the Garden of Peace in Ilford to look at and speak with Mohammed Omar about like working with them to make sure that this is done, and that we know that the need for this to be happening quickly. So we make sure that that's, you know, sort of priority for us and we can get everything done. But the operation, I mean, there's other experts in the room, but they'll tell you that it depends how quick they are. Mr. Roberts, very experienced surgeon, aren't you? So it's like, what do you say, about 2 to 6? Depends on what organs, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you put it into perspective about how long the process normally takes, now the donor has a direct liaison, which is a specialist nurse, which you wouldn't normally get. So whether it's an unexpected death or a death that would normally have a process of investigation, all of that is fast-tracked. So even if you take into account the operation, that versus what happens to somebody normally when they pass away in hospital is much quicker. And you know, there's access to the coroner 24 hours, which isn't always available. So I think however you look at it, it is quicker. It is quicker, and there's less questions left afterwards, which is what often people face when somebody passes away in hospital.
So practically, if people pass away in hospital, the additional part is this 2 to 6 hours of surgery time. Is that all we're talking about? Because the bits before dying and bits after are the same. Getting death certificates, so it's still an issue in going in every hospital every day. So we're talking 2 to 6 hours delay, maybe 8 hours delay?
Yeah, so I mean, you know, a lot of focus is put on the actual operation time, but the whole process is quite a long process, you know. It's been like quite often 12 hours of process for consent and everything before. But that's not something that's causing a delay, you know. That's something where taking into certification of death, what's going to happen in the process, all of that is done within that time period. So yeah, the operation can take 2 to 6 hours, sometimes a little bit longer. But in the grand scheme of things, you know, like when somebody passes away, sometimes we're talking in days before the process is normally done. You wait till the next day the bereavement office is open, then the coroner will process all the deaths that have happened in the normal way. There isn't a way to fast track it. But actually being a donor, you get fast tracked because you've got specialized people who have direct portals to these institutions to get everything done. So not only is a time issue, but then, you know, it's a very difficult process for the family where they don't always feel that they're able to, you know, talk to clinicians or different people to help. But in this situation, there's no question that they can't ask the specialist nurse who's been involved. And, you know, they will be able to be given a very accurate time. And I think the accurate prediction of time is much more useful than the actual time lapse. Because that's what people want to know. They need to tell funeral services, other people attending, all of these kind of things. And having looked at the two processes of, you know, somebody who's died and become a donor and some otherwise, you know, there is, you know, a definite prediction of when the body will be released and what's going to happen beyond that point. And the teams are involved all the way through until the body is actually released and then goes to funeral, which isn't a normal kind of, you know, you don't have the capacity in the NHS to do that for every death. So it's, one is the benefit of transplant, but the benefit for the donor and the donor family carries on until the process is complete. And I think that's important. A lot of people who've had individuals pass away in hospital do sometimes feel it's hard to get communication and find out what's going on and delay.
We're the point of contact for that family from the very beginning, all the way to when the family leave the hospital and beyond. You know, so we'll keep in contact with the family. We'll write to them maybe about 2 weeks after, so we let the transplant patients have some recovery, and we'll write to them 2 weeks after to let them know about the transplant. And then the family can contact us at any point, any questions. So we're constantly with that family from the beginning and beyond after death.
Thank you. I'm going to come in. Thank you. Actually, if you're coming, don't stop for lunch.